Hawk Harrelson joins us now here. And Ken, unfortunately, your ceremony was postponed because of the pandemic. There is hope that you can have that ceremony and that moment in the sun later this summer in July. What was that moment like last year, when you got the call that you were the winner of this prestigious award?
You can put it on the board, yes. Excuse me, very seldom am I at a loss for words. I was at a loss for words when I've known Tim Meade, for a long, long time, since he was with the Angels, and now he does such a great job with the Hall of Fame. But when you get something like that, I mean, when they announced, when Timmy told me that I was the winner of the Ford Frick Award, I just felt unbelievable, but I never realized. I knew it was big, but I never realized it was this big.
Yeah.
I mean, my fan mail has grown and grown and grown from all over the world. I mean, not just the United States, but since I received the Ford Frick Award, and it's and then I go see guys over at the golf club at Bay Hill and at Orange Tree, and they hey, Hall of Famer, how you doing? And that has a significant meaning. And, people always ask me about who was the greatest pitcher that I ever faced. Mm-hmm. And I told them, I said, you got to categorize it. And Ron Darling knows exactly what I'm talking about, because of the fact that I categorize them right-handed starters, right-handed relievers, left-handed starters, and left-handed relievers. And I categorize announcers, the same way. The greatest comprehensive announcer I've ever heard, who could do it all: football, basketball, baseball, golf, and where he endeared himself to millions and billions of people, is Bob Costas. And he's the greatest comprehensive announcer. And the greatest call I've ever heard by an announcer was, "Do you believe in miracles?" I mean, that was the greatest call I've ever heard in sports. And the greatest comprehensive baseball announcer I've ever heard was Don Drysdale. And I mean, Don knew the game. He knew pitching. He knew hitting. He was a symbol of pitching for a long, long time. But, everybody on that list is deserving. Yeah. And I think that, that it was summed up just a few minutes ago very well. And they're all unique in their own way. And, of course, I always had one thing. Kurt Gowdy and Howard Cosell. It was amazing because after I got into broadcasting in 1975, my partner was Dick Stockton, who I loved, and who was a terrific, comprehensive announcer himself. He taught me a lot right off the bat. I was lucky to have him as my first partner. But Gowdy and Cosell, the coach, Kurt calls me up and he says, "I'm coming to Fenway Park. I want to talk to you." I said, "Sure." So we get talking and everything. He said, "I'm going to give you the best piece of advice that you'll ever get about announcing." And I said, "What's that, Kurt?" He goes, "Don't try to please everybody, because you can't. It's impossible, especially in a two-team city." Now, the coach calls me up a couple of weeks later. He said, "I'm coming into town. I want to talk to you." And it was weird. It was surreal. It was eerie, he says, "I'm going to give you the best piece of advice you'll ever have about announcing." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "Don't try to please everybody, because you can't." And as you know, the coach, Howard Cosell, didn't try to please everybody. Right. And he was like the dean, so to speak, of announcers starting to make some real money. Yeah. And that's the way I 42 years I announced, and that was my mantra. I didn't try to please everybody, especially in a two-team city. And then the guy who's sitting in my seat now, Jason Benetti, I told him the same thing when I retired. "Jason, don't try to please everybody, because you can't." And you only get a lot of unwarranted criticism, Cub fans calling up the talk shows, telling how bad you are. And the Cub announcers, were getting the same thing from Sox fans calling up the radio shows. So you can't please everybody. And when I get letters and I talk to young aspiring announcers now, I tell them the same thing. Don't try to please everybody, be yourself. And that's what I did for 42 years.
Hawk, for 33 of those 42 years, you were with the White Sox. You mentioned the two-town city. What did it mean to be part of the soundtrack of one team? I think if you're a White Sox fan over the last 3 decades, the summer sounds a lot like Hawk Harrelson.
Yeah, well, I've been lucky. I started off with the Red Sox 7 years, and I had 2 years with the Yankees, and of course 33 with my White Sox. And excuse me. And I was lucky because we always had decent teams, and then we had a world championship team right here in '05. And I've always been fortunate in that to be with some good ball clubs. And that being the case, it's because, I'm just a huge White Sox fan. And everybody I've worked with the White Sox, the first guy, of course, was the Whimperoo, Tom Patrick. And we used to play baseball after the games. And when I was with Kansas City, the team that went to Oakland and won 5 consecutive divisional titles and 3 consecutive world championships, we used to sit there till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes after a ball game. And the same thing happened with the White Sox when we had Jerry Koosman and the Bull, Greg Luzinski. And we would sit there and we would talk sometimes till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And the same thing holds too. Drysdale and I used to sit there and talk, and we would tell each other how bleep we were, and then try to solve it out. And the thing about broadcasting is that there are a lot of people who can do 1-0, 2-1, 3-2 games, because those games, if you've got a great producer, like I was lucky there too. I always had Jim Angio, was the Hall of Fame producer if they ever opened up a wing there, and Mike Leary, great producer. And Jimmy was a great director. And if you've got good people like that, they can make an announcer who's having a bad game look decent. And they can make an announcer who's having a good game look terrific. And there's where I believe so much. And I told everybody I ever worked with, DJ Darren Jackson and Tom Patrick, I said, look, it's just like playing. You got to bust your ass every day. When you walk in that booth, you got to be ready to go. And it's not that you're going to use everything you've been working on, but if it pops up in that game, you do it. And I used to say, have a saying that I used to walk into that booth. Every time I'd ever walk in that booth, I'd say, all right, Hawk, let's get it done.
Yeah.
And that was the guidelines and the mantra that I worked under.
Well, Hawk, we look forward to seeing you in Cooperstown in the summer of 2021. Congratulations again for your award win last year, and thanks for joining us here.
It's my pleasure. And tell Mark I said hello, would you?
I will.
Mark,
I will do that.